6232. One entry costs £2 plus one standard network rate message, or text bonus to 63232. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start from just £2. You can call 0903 681 3232. Calls cost £2 plus your network access charge, or post your name and number to GB10 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 6 p.m. on the 31st of January. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Mark Dolan tonight is your weekend dose of news, debate and entertainment. This sounds like a wild conspiracy theory. Don't miss My Big Opinion. Mark meets and My Take at 10. Democracy is a funny old thing. And we don't do boring. Not on my watch. I just won't have it. Let's go and get another glass of that bubbly. You've earned it. That's Mark Dolan tonight, Saturday and Sunday, 9 to 11, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
It's Patrick Christie's tonight, and here we do things differently.
It's explaining the absolute madness of this, doesn't it?
It's explosive.
I mean, this is very good.
It's lively.
850. Your government sat there, Sean, and it did nothing.
It's controversial.
And the Middle East has been in turmoil since before I was born.
It's everything you need to kickstart your evening.
Everyone's had their Weetabix tonight. I love to see it.
That's Patrick Christie's tonight, weeknights from 9 p.m. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
A very good evening. Listen to that celestial welcome there at 7 p.m. I'm Martin Dorby, standing in for the big man Nigel Farage on Farage Tonight. On tonight's show, the tech billionaire Elon Musk is rumoured to be prepared to spend $100 million on a donation to Reform UK to help Nigel Farage's path to number 10, should he do it. Next up, Europe in crisis. Is France's government about to fall? And will Germany abandon also the European project? And President Joe Biden pardons his embattled son Hunter, despite saying he would never do that. Is this the US justice system being used for political purposes? And Nigel Farage challenges the government over self-determination for the Chagos Islands. Are we witnessing a case of two-tiered territories? But first, it's time for your news, and here's Sophia Hill. In fact, actually, we're going to wait to get to the news. Look at this lovely Christmas tree. Look at my lovely panel. It's Gawain Towler and it's Nigel Nelson. We're going to have a great time tonight. That story about Elon Musk and the $100 million, what a cat amongst the pigeons moment. It's an absolute dynamite story. Will it ever happen? More to the point, will the Labour Party ever allow it to happen? As far as I'm concerned, I predicted this on November the 21st on this show when Elon Musk first tweeted, all of the political establishments in Britain will get crushed. What a night we've got ahead. That's coming. OK, we're talking. I've been told to keep talking. Gawain, let's bring you in. Let's talk about Elon Musk. Elon Musk. Now, you're connected to the party, or you certainly have your finger in the pie. Is it going to happen?
I don't think it's going to happen today.
Here is your news headlines. We'll have more in a minute.
A very good evening. It's just gone 7 o'clock. I'm Sophia Hill with your latest headlines from the GB newsroom. Some breaking news in the last half hour. Queen Camilla will miss the ceremonial welcome for the Emir of the State of Qatar and Her Highness Sheikha Jawaha tomorrow. GB News understands there have been no alteration in a diagnosis or any treatment being received, and Her Majesty just needs time to rest with lingering side effects of a chest infection. The Emir of the State of Qatar and his wife arrived at Stansted Airport earlier today ahead of a 2-day state visit hosted by King Charles in London. The Qatari head of state will be treated to a carriage procession up the Mall and a state banquet in Buckingham Palace's Grand Ballroom. Full coverage on GB News throughout the visit. Now, the Home Secretary, Yvette Cooper, has claimed the Tories' Rwanda plan did not stop a single boat, claiming the scheme cost £700 million of taxpayers' money. She went on to say the deterrent did not result in a single deportation or stop a single boat crossing the Channel, branding the whole thing a grotesque waste of money. But Shadow Home Secretary Chris Philp claims the Rwanda scheme would have been an effective deterrent if allowed to go ahead.
the Labour government, after it was elected, cancelled that deterrent. They cancelled that Rwanda deterrent before it had even started. And had that flight taken off as planned, we would not have seen the 64% increase that we have seen since the election, exactly as the National Crime Agency foresaw. But it's not just me, it's not just the National Crime Agency. Even Ursula von der Leyen, the President of the European Commission, has called for European member states to implement an offshore processing scheme.
Now, Greg Wallace has apologised for any offence that he caused after posting a video saying complaints about his behaviour came from a handful of middle-class women of a certain age. Downing Street's labelled the comments as inappropriate and misogynistic, and Culture Secretary Lisa Nandy has raised the issue with BBC bosses. The corporation's under fire about claims senior management were warned about Wallace's alleged behaviour 4 times. The BBC said it takes any issues that are raised with us seriously, and we have robust processes in place to deal with them. Meanwhile, Greg Wallace's lawyer says it is entirely false that he engages in behaviour of a sexually harassing nature.
I wasn't in a good headspace when I posted it. I've been under a huge amount of stress, a lot of emotion. I felt very alone, under siege yesterday when I posted it. It's obvious to me I need to take some time out.
And to end, travel disruption could be on the way, with Met Office warning icy stretches and some dense freezing fog this week. Temperatures could plunge to as low as -8 degrees Celsius after a pretty mild weekend, with tonight expected to be the coldest night of the week. Parts of Scotland over high ground are expected to reach the lowest of temperatures. Those are the latest GB News headlines for now. I'm Sophia Hill. Now it's back to Martin.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
And welcome back to Farage with me, Martin Dorby, covering for the big man. Now, here's one for you. Tech billionaire Elon Musk is rumoured to be preparing a $100 million donation to Reform UK, aiming to help Nigel Farage's path to number 10. In fact, he could rocket boost it. And this wouldn't be Musk's first foray into British politics, of course. The Tesla CEO has previously taken aim at Sir Keir Starmer, criticising his response to the summer riots and also his stance on free speech. If the reports hold true, this substantial funding could deal a devastating blow to the Conservative Party. And earlier on GB News, Nigel Farage responded to these rumours.
I have literally no idea about this at all. What I do know is that Elon Musk is very supportive of me, what I'm trying to do, and he thinks that if Reform do well in the UK, we can bring about the same kind of change that he intends to do with Donald Trump in America. All of that is true. Yes, he is very supportive, but honestly, this idea of huge sums of money, well, let's put it like this. It hasn't been discussed with me.
Well, last month I spoke on my programme about the possibility of Elon Musk getting stuck into UK politics, citing his fond relationship with Nigel Farage and what this could mean for the future of Reform UK. Take a listen to Mystic Martin. Musk shared an image of Keir Starmer's plummeting approval ratings with the prediction that all establishment parties in the UK will get crushed in the next election. Might the UK be his next target? Who's now is friends with Nigel Farage. Elon Musk has been very, very outspoken of his disdain for our Prime Minister Sir Keir Starmer over Southport, over free speech arrests. He called him two-tier Keir, over the farmers' protests, over the Alison Pearson incident. Putting all these dots together, could Britain be suddenly a new project for Elon Musk? Well, should such an intervention occur, what form would it take? Well, with stringent rules around donations to UK political parties and previous accusations of Labour interfering in the US election after busing activists to campaign in key states, how would Musk get around this? Well, his father spoke to GB News yesterday on Nana Akwia's show and suggested this.
Good idea. If it's not something he's not allowed to do, I would say as a private person, maybe he's allowed to do that, you know. I'm eligible for British citizenship, so is he, I suppose. I think, though, that if the thing that's stopping Farage from moving ahead is money, then he should get money so that he can move ahead.
Oh, it's going to get heads rotating, this one. And as Nigel Farage reveals, he knows nothing of such a financial boost from Mr Musk. Where do Reform UK stand on the prospect? Well, their deputy leader, Richard Tice, seems to be embracing the idea with open arms.
Supporter of what Reform is standing for. He's tweeted quite rightly against the failings of the Prime Minister. He stands up for free speech. His political instincts are absolutely bang on. Anybody who wants to look at donating to Reform, who shares our values, that's a fantastic. As long as it's legally declared by a legal entity, of course, we wouldn't turn it down. And would a significant sum help put Reform into running the government? Yes.
Well, are we about to see a major Musk intervention in British politics? Has Christmas come early for Reform UK? Would indeed it be the right thing to do? So tonight, I'm asking you the big question. Should Elon Musk, the tech billionaire, donate $100 million to Nigel Farage's Reform UK? You can tweet #Farage on GB News or email farage@gbnews.com. Now, let's get stuck into this topic with our panel. And tonight is the former spokesman for Reform UK, Gawain Towler, and also GB News' senior political commentator, Nigel Nelson. Gents, welcome to the show. Gawain, I'm duty-bound to start with you. It's a delicious rumour. It's certainly getting tongues wagging. It's put the cat amongst the pigeons. Is it going to happen likely, do you think?
I don't think it's going to happen today. But I think that the rumour itself might make it so, in the sense that I bet Musk hadn't the first idea about this until he read about it in the Times on Sunday. However, it's that he is the sort of mischievous mind that thinks, you know what, if I could make a difference, maybe it's worth it. And through his legal entities, his businesses in this country, he does have the right to donate. Now, I do think that this government will desperately come up with some regulation, some statutory instrument or something to stop it happening. That will go, oh, my God, no. Please, no, can't have that happening. So I wouldn't be at all surprised in the next 6 months or so we see a new law banning foreign-owned companies from donating to British politics, just to stymie something before it's even happened, before even Musk has considered it properly. Look, British politics is very different from American politics. The sheer scale of funding in America is
a lot cheaper in Britain.
Dwarfs what goes on in the UK. And frankly, I mean, I no longer work for Reform, so I have no vested interest in this money arriving. Curses. However, I think that the way things are set up at present, the way that corporate interest is set up, the way that trade unions are set up, the way that the major parties have got almost guaranteed funding to a certain extent, whereas insurgent parties like Reform do not. We rely on our membership. Now, 100,000 is a great number, but it's still beans in comparison to what the big parties get. So this sort of rumour. Not only is it entertaining because it sends the willies up the Tory party and Labour, but also it might shake a few serious UK donors to think, you know what, I will do it.
But isn't this the sort of foreign intervention that got people like you, people like Nigel Farage, frothing at the mouth about foreign intervention? Barack Obama, you'd be at the back of the queue. Keir Starmer sending people to help Kamala Harris.
I love Gina Miller, that philanthropist and political campaigner, complaining about this story. After she received, I think her operation received up to 600,000 from George Soros's operation. Look, hypocrisy is something that the British do very, very well indeed. And I see a great deal of hypocrisy going on right now. Should a foreign... Well, personally, I'm not entirely sure. And as I say, seeing as I'm not going to gain anything from it, I could be honest.
OK. Nigel Nelson, let's bring you in at this point. It certainly has put the cat amongst the pigeons, and Errol Musk, Elon Musk's father, said he could quite easily claim British citizenship, dual nationality. His mother was born in Liverpool, so that could be a way around it. Do you think that Gawain's right? There'll be a frenzied clamping down on anything like this, because $100 million, let's face it, is an absolute game changer for British politics.
Small change for Elon Musk, of course. Yeah. I mean, under the rules at the moment, he can easily do it. He just does it through the British arm of his company. It's straightforward. I think it would be very difficult to actually stop that, and the implications of stopping that is obviously any other foreign donor wouldn't be able to give. Whether he should or not, I mean, I think that Elon Musk should butt out of British politics, and especially...
Did you say that when Barack Obama came over and banged on about Brexit? I suspect you didn't.
Well, I mean, the whole thing about... I mean, the same thing applies to Barack Obama, yeah. I mean, Elon Musk is in a slightly different situation. He's criticising the current government fairly constantly on X, and he's also got an official position in the new Trump administration. That, I think, should rule him out from starting to meddle in what happens over here.
But, as you said, if he puts the money into a corporation or to his father, he would be effectively legally once removed from the whole situation.
But I correct me if I'm wrong. I understand his position in the American government is for a year. It's very much time limited.
So that'd be over by the time we get towards our electoral cycle.
So therefore, he'd be out of Doge or whatever it is. His American appointments, the American government appointments. So at that point, when he is no longer a formal representative of the American government, that changes your point of view, I take it.
Well, I mean, in the sense that he's been part of the Trump administration, no, it doesn't. I don't think that Musk should at all, even in his present position, get himself involved in British politics.
But what he's already done, and Musk spent and lost a huge sum of money buying Twitter, X, in order to even the playing field in social media, where social media has largely been preserved of the left, and he basically stood in... Oh, come on, Meta. Bill Gates is so much more power. Bill Gates is swooping in to number 10. Bill Gates is chatting away with Starmer, but that's fine.
But the whole point of say, Twitter, well, I prefer to call it Twitter than X anyway, the whole point was it was an open forum for everyone to have a go.
It still is.
Yes,
just because the left had disappeared off to
we then have the owner of it then interfering, and wrongly sometimes, by saying things like, oh, the Falklands going to be used as a detention camp for rioters, which was absolute nonsense.
Entertaining, but rubbish.
Which he retracted, in fairness.
One of the things that I think Trump said in the last week, and I actually followed Trump for the first time about a week ago, because I never have, but one of the things he said last week was that he encourages chief executives, politicians, all the rest, to do their own Twitter. And he made this point, sometimes you'll make a mess of it, but it's better to be authentic. And Trump, and the whole point about Twitter, as we all know, is that there is much hyperbole. There's half of Musk's tweets, posts, X, are space, memes, taking the mick, and then politics.
Well, that's irresponsible, isn't it?
Yeah, but
no, it's not irresponsible. It's being human.
If you're the owner, from the backwoods of America, he's the richest man in the world.
We're getting sidetracked by X or Twitter. Nobody wins elections on Twitter. If they did, Corbyn would have been Prime Minister, we'd still be in the European Union, Hillary Clinton would have won the last presidential election. The real game is won on the ground, and that costs a lot of money. It costs teams, it costs organisation. Back to the $100 million. If that came in, it would be the biggest donation ever to British politics. It would dwarf anything by the Conservatives, and it could potentially, absolutely be a game changer. That's why, do you think the Labour Party will rewrite the rules to try and stop it?
No, I don't, because I don't see how you can rewrite the rules to go and particularly stop that. I would like to see new rules whereby there aren't any foreign donations, but very difficult if you've got a British arm of a company.
Well, why not just say that any American-owned or foreign-owned company is no longer allowed to? I'm sure the Russians would be any foreign-owned company. The Russians and the Tories would be very upset if we did that.
I think the Tories would.
But I mean, the point is, OK, so UK-based firms that make money here, pay taxes here, can't be involved. Employ here, can't be involved in British politics. I think we couldn't have that. I mean,
that's why I think it won't change.
Okay, gentlemen, quickly to wrap up, do you think, in a word, it's going to happen, yes or no?
I think it just might.
No. No, I think it will. That's 2-1. There we go. The ayes have it. The ayes have it. Now, coming up next, Europe in crisis. Is France's government about to fall? And will Germany abandon the European project? That's next.
Sunday with Michael Portillo from 11, only on GB News.
Australian chef David Thompson is opening a new restaurant, Long Chim. The name, which translates roughly as come and try, already has locations in Sydney, Perth and Dubai, and previously operated in Melbourne and Singapore. It marks a return to London for Thompson, whose Belgravia haunt Naarm closed in 2012, but that earned him accolades including, in 2002, the first Michelin star awarded to a Thai restaurant. So you've mentioned Bangkok there. What is your love for Thai food? Describe to us why you think Thai food is such a great cuisine.
endlessly complex and satisfying. It just resonates on the palate. For me, as a cook, it offers a challenge, and the way that you cook it is you chase taste. You don't follow a recipe, you follow your sense of taste. And so with all these dishes that you'll taste today, but also in the restaurant that we're opening, it's all about a sequence of taste and seasoning that has some balance.
What is this dish?
This is something called gengari gung, which is an aromatic curry of prawns.
Lovely looking prawns, yes.
They're not too bad. And it's with something strange called water bamboo, which we found up in Chinatown just the other day. And it's a perfect accompaniment. I'll just take a little.
Yes. Describe that perfect accompaniment to me again. Water bamboo. What is it? Water bamboo, yeah.
And you would not know of it, because I didn't know of it that much either. And it tastes like a little bit of like young coconut meat. So it's perfect with these prawns and this curry. And what you need to have with this curry, because this is the way that Thai food works, an interplay of flavours, this little cucumber salad on the side, and that helps to bring out the spice and the sweetness and the savoury quality.
I must say, all of this looks so lovely.
GB News, the People's Channel.
I'm Christopher Hope. From pop stars to politicians, I'll interview anybody in a pub who's got a political opinion. Join me every Friday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube or gbnews.com, or wherever you get your podcasts. This is GB News, the People's Channel.
This is Britain's newsroom, where your voice matters.
It's just astonishing. With expert analysis and honest opinion, we don't just keep you informed.
We bring you unique perspectives you won't see anywhere else.
Can't argue with any of that. When the news happens, it happens here.
On Britain's newsroom, weekdays from 9:30 a.m.
Only on GB News.
Nightmare commute? Kick it up a gear with GB News Radio. You can listen online and on DAB+ and on the GB News app. We're also on TuneIn and the Radio Player apps. From the school run to rush hour, get revved up with GB News Radio. We are the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to Farage with me, Martin Dorman. Now, before the break, we asked you, should Elon Musk donate that's $100 million to Nigel Farage's Reform UK? John says this, yes, absolutely. It's brilliant that the Musk family are entitled to UK citizenship if it can't be the corporate route. And Tim says this, as long as it is transparent and is not used for Reform Party purposes, well, it would be, but is put into a fund that is used to benefit the British public, e.g. covering legal costs for deporting illegal immigrants, then why not? I don't think that would happen, Tim, but I see you thinking. And let's move on now to our next story, because across Europe, it seems right-wing movements are flexing their political muscles, shaking the European Union's foundational ideals. In Germany, the Alternative for Deutschland AfD party is campaigning on a radical platform to leave the European Union, scrap the euro and exit the Paris climate deal as it prepares for early elections in February 2025. And meanwhile, in France, the Prime Minister, Michel Barnier, my old sparring partner, his government is teetering on the brink of collapse after pushing through a contentious budget without a parliamentary vote. Marine Le Pen's National Rally has vowed to bring down the government unless its demands for more concessions, including cuts to France's EU contributions, are met. Now, is the growing influence of the right wing a looming threat to the European project? Well, joining me from Germany is the former Alternative for Germany AfD MEP Lars Patrick Berg. Welcome to the show, Lars. Always a pleasure to have your company. So France teetering on the brink, and a couple of weeks ago, the coalition went into meltdown in Germany. Might that trigger an early election in Germany? Tell us the latest.
It will certainly trigger an early election. Good evening, Martin. But I'm convinced that Germany won't leave the European Union. This would be a disaster for the German industry and for the German people. And therefore, I think AfD is very, very cautious to not put this on the agenda too much upfront to the snap elections that are going to be held in February next year.
But Lars, isn't it the case that Germany's economy is already in crisis, and the reason that the coalition started to fall apart was because of punishing net zero targets. Particularly the German car industry is absolutely being shafted. Volkswagen, Mercedes, BMW are pleading for less punishment in terms of electric vehicle sales, and that's before Donald Trump comes into power with the prospect of tariffs. Is it fair to say that net zero is turning into a disaster for German industry?
Well, it is correct. And of course, internal problems were also made, especially within the large corporations in the automotive industry and the car manufacturers in regards to electric vehicles. But nevertheless, it will not be a key issue to leave the European Union, and it would be a disaster for the automotive industry as well.
Okay, and last, I saw some astonishing figures a couple of weeks ago. The German government released figures showing that 63% of all unemployment benefits are of foreign origin, meaning either people born directly abroad or first-generation children of those born abroad. That's an astonishing figure. 2/3 of the entire unemployment benefits budget from outside of Germany. That in itself must be making voters ask a lot of questions about how money is being spent. This is billions and billions of euros every single year.
That is correct. That is crazy politics. And the electorate isn't going to put up with this much longer, that billions of euros are going to be being transferred to third-party countries. And a lot of people who are really trying to put up to the rising cost of living are getting very, very angry about this specific issue and mass migration that is still ongoing.
And lots, of course, we also have seen some horrendous terrorist attacks, some killings of policemen, and the astonishing situation now, the Germans, the tolerant, welcoming, liberal Germans, are deporting Afghani criminals back to the Taliban.
Well, this is ridiculous indeed, and there needs to be a complete shift of politics, especially in the field of migration, because this is driving the German society apart. It is polarizing the German society. And not even the Christian Democrats have been willing so far to change these crazy politics. This is really ridiculous.
Yeah, we need a huge reset by the sounds of it. Thanks very much for joining us. That's the former AfD MEP, that's Lars Patrick Berg. Thanks for joining us on the show. Absolutely superb. Thank you. Now, during Advent, as we count down to Christmas Day, we are hearing from church ministers across the country, and each day they have a special message for you to celebrate the festive season. Take a look.
The GB News Advent Calendar, Day 2.
My name's Marcus. I'm a priest in the Church of England. Imagine trying to walk through a room that is completely dark. As you try and feel your way around, you're bumping into things, tripping over things, and making a complete mess in the process. Without light, we cannot see the truth about things. We end up getting confused, disorientated, and lost in the dark. Maybe this is how you feel in a spiritual sort of sense. When we are spiritually in the dark, we don't know who we are, where we are from, or where we are going. Evil becomes good, and good becomes evil. As we approach Christmas and all the Christmas lights go up, a light has dawned in the darkness. With the birth of Jesus Christ, he came to earth to shed a light on the truth about God and about life, which means we no longer have to walk in darkness. Jesus tells us in John chapter 8, verse 12, "I am the light of the world. Whoever follows me will never have to walk in darkness, but will have the light of life." This is Emmanuel, God with us.
Isn't that just magnificent? Gawain Tower there, very much admiring the church structure. Wonderful, wonderful stuff, rousing stuff. And don't forget, you can see all of our special Advent messages as Christmas approaches by going to gbnews.com/Advent. And a very, very Merry Christmas, one and all. Now, coming up next, President Joe Biden pardons his embattled son Hunter, despite saying he would never, ever do that. Is this the US justice system being used once again for political purposes? That's next.
Hello, good evening. Welcome to your GB News weather update from the Met Office. Turning very cold overnight in northern areas with a sharp frost and a risk of ice. Cloudier elsewhere though, so not turning quite as chilly, but it's still going to be a fairly cold night on offer for all. We've currently got high pressure sat to the north of the country. That's bringing in a cold northerly flow of air, bringing us that risk of frost and ice overnight. So any showers across Scotland, Northern Ireland, northern parts of England generally easing away. Plenty of clear skies here where we're likely to see that sharp frost by the time we reach the morning. Perhaps even some freezing fog patches and some icy stretches too, but much cloudier across central and southern areas, a slight breeze here, so it will still be a cold night, but it's not going to be turning quite as frosty. So to start the day on Tuesday, do take care if you're out and about early, likely to see a sharp frost and some icy stretches, still a few showers feeding into western parts too. Similar across Northern Ireland, plenty of clear skies here, so likely to see some frosty conditions, once again a risk of ice too. But elsewhere across central parts of England, southern England, parts of Wales too, more cloud here, so still a chilly start to the day, but not turning quite as frosty. And generally for many of us, it's going to be a largely settled day. Plenty of sunny spells, though still on the chilly side. We will start to see a bit of a change from the west, some cloud and outbreaks of rain moving into parts of Cornwall, and similar across western parts of Scotland, some outbreaks of rain here too. Heavy at times, and may even start to see some snow across higher levels too. But on the whole, a chilly day, highs of between 8 to 10 Celsius in the south. Heading into Wednesday, once again, rain clearing overnight, leaving a risk of ice, particularly across Scotland in the morning, but otherwise largely settled, plenty of sunshine, though once again we'll start to see cloud move in from the west, seeing some outbreaks of rain across Northern Ireland, western parts of Scotland too. And it's fairly unsettled towards the end of the week, milder though, before it turns cold again into the weekend. Bye-bye.
Go to gbnews.com/shop now and take advantage of our biggest ever Black Friday sale with 25% off all items across our store and free shipping on orders worth £60 or more. There's never been a better time to grab something for the GB News fan in your life. From our signature clothing to drinkware, gifts, accessories and much, much more, you'll find the perfect present this festive season. Use the code BLACKFRIDAY25 on checkout at gbnews.com/shop for our best ever Black Friday deals.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, for a frank and honest discussion with those in power that cuts through the spin and gets to the heart of the issues shaping our nation.
You haven't confirmed that you want to stand as leader, but you haven't ruled it out either.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial. Is he indecisive? Incompetent?
I deliver the dose of reality Westminster needs. That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Well, back to Farage and me, Martin Dorby, standing in for the big man. Now, President Joe Biden has issued an official pardon for his son Hunter, saying he was unfairly prosecuted. Hunter Biden was set to face sentencing this month on gun and tax convictions. He pleaded guilty to tax charges earlier in September and was found guilty of being an illegal drug user in possession of a gun back in June. Now, President Biden said in a statement last night that politics has infected this process. And US President-elect Donald Trump has called the pardon an abuse and miscarriage of justice after seeming to predict this earlier this year.
If you are president again, in the name of unity, would you consider pardoning Hunter Biden?
What they've done is use the FBI and they've used the Department of Injustice to go after their political opponent. And the answer is no, I don't want to do that. But I could have done it with Hillary, and certainly you do it with Hunter or whatever, but I don't want to do it with Hunter either. And I'll bet you the father probably pardons him. Let's see what happens.
So there you go. Donald Trump predicted this would happen, and he said he wouldn't go after Hunter Biden if he were elected. Now, can Joe Biden really claim that his son's was a political prosecution after what Donald Trump has been through? Well, joining me now to discuss this is US political analyst Eric Ham. Eric, welcome to the show. Always a pleasure to have your company. Isn't this rank and gross and abject hypocrisy? Joe Biden said he would never do this, and he's only gone and done it.
Yeah, that's right. And quite frankly, I thought it was a head scratcher that President Biden actually said early on that he would not, in fact, pardon his son. We knew that there was the likelihood that he would be convicted of these charges, and we found that he was. And now President Biden is saying that this was all politically motivated, which certainly it was, and that's why he has done this. But I think this is more about what President Biden thinks about his own Justice Department being led by Merrick Garland. And I think that's something that's not getting the attention that it should, because clearly I think what President Biden was saying is that his Justice Department should have never actually prosecuted his son. And now that they went ahead and did it, he's actually going to undo the conviction by pardoning him.
Isn't there something else at play here, though, Eric? And it's the pardon mysteriously goes back to 2014. Now, the allegations in question here go back to 2016, 2017. But the 2014 years, of course, was when Hunter was in Ukraine, when there were all allegations about the involvement of that oil money. And that would have dragged Joe Biden under the microscope. Is this pardon not just a pardon for Hunter, but a pardon also for Joe Biden himself?
No.
That's it. No. A lot of people are saying that could be the case. It's a cover for himself.
No. I mean,
simple no.
You're trying to build something that simply isn't there to be built upon. So no.
Well, a lot of people are saying that
a lot of people like who? I mean, we certainly haven't heard it from any law enforcement agency. I think these are just Republican talking points. And I think what we see here is even if you look at what Hunter Biden was actually convicted of, most people outside of the name Biden have actually been given either a time served or have simply pled out for a case like this. And I think what we're seeing here is, again, Joe Biden's own Justice Department simply caved to the political pressure from congressional Republican lawmakers, as well as Donald Trump, who at the time was a presidential candidate, and of course decided to take this case to trial, which they were successful in getting a conviction. And now I think what we're seeing here is Joe Biden is actually putting his finger on the scale of justice by actually offering this pardon to his son. Now, I think if there wants to be an argument that Joe Biden is now actually has struck a blow to democracy, that's certainly an argument that can be made. But to try to drag this back into something about what happened in 2014, that's just a bridge too far.
Well, Eric Ham, how about bridge too far being somebody who's always put themselves on a higher moral plinth? This is the kind of thing that only people like Donald Trump would do. Suddenly, those scales of justice, as you said, just been leaned on by Joe Biden. Is it a tawdry footnote to his political career?
Oh, well, certainly, I think there is going to be and I think this is a big question for the United States going forward, because now you've got President Biden, who has issued this pardon for his son. And also the United States bills itself, particularly when it's talking to both its allies and its enemies, that it is a nation of laws, that it subjects itself, its citizenry subjects itself to these laws. And what we're seeing here is Joe Biden is now extricating his son from those laws, and very much in the same manner we see President-elect Trump not being held to account. And so I think this is, when you put both of these together, I think this is, going to be very difficult, a very hard sell for the United States when talking to its allies and its enemies about democracy and the benefits of democracy, when you look at what's transpired and what Joe Biden did, as well as what we see from President-elect Donald Trump.
Excellent stuff. Thanks for joining us there, Eric Ham, US political analyst. And yeah, wouldn't be drawn on 2014, but let's go to my panel now. Gawain Towler, the former spokesperson for Reform UK, and of course Nigel Nelson, GBNews, a senior political commentator. Nigel, going to start with you. Worth pointing out that practically every president in the history of the United States has gone for these pardons. I think only two haven't, and one of them was assassinated. So it is relatively normal, but the legacy issue remains. This is precisely the kind of thing that Biden said he would never do. And look, he's finally he's just as bad as the rest of them.
Yeah, it's wrong. I mean, it's as simple as that. It's the wrong thing to do. What it does mean is that we're pretty lucky in Britain to have a constitutional monarchy and a non-political head of state. A political head of state can do what they like, which is what Biden is showing here. And I think the worst thing for America is it shows that head of state has no trust in his own justice system.
Gawain, what do you think about this as a final bowing out from Joe Biden? It's a tawdry affair.
To me, it's medieval. It's utterly medieval. as Mr. Hull was saying, it raises huge questions over the rule of law. It raises huge questions over equality and justice, that individuals are treated the same way by the law. The justice is blind, the putting fingers on the balances and all the rest of it. This is a huge, huge issue for how people see themselves and how they see their own nations as a place of equality, of decency and of the rule of law. But as I say, this thing about what I find astonishing about this pardon is it doesn't just pardon him for the things we know he's done. It pardons him for things we haven't the first idea about that may happen, may be discovered later. It is like the Crusaders being given an indulgence that they can go off and rob and steal and murder over a period of time because God has given the clearance. Well, Biden has acted like God and given his own son. And you talk about every single president up until now. I don't recall, apart from the pardon for Jared Kushner's father, perhaps, but normally this is for felons and criminals, but not actually the son of the president. Yeah. This is medieval.
And that's a bridge too far for many. Gawain, Nigel, thank you very much. Now let's move on to the next section of the show for tonight. It's What the Farage Moment. Check this out. A newly disclosed NHS training scenario uncovered and exposed by this man, Gawain Towler, on X. It asks staff to assess a potential safeguarding risk for a newborn baby based on the presence of extreme right-wing political material in the parent's home. The guidance instructs midwives to consider intervention or escalate the matter to safeguarding teams, with new NHS waiting lists topping 7 million people and constant accusations of chronic underfunding. I'm asking, is this a good use of NHS resources, or does it tread dangerously close to government-sponsored surveillance? Let's go back to our panel now. Gawain, you unearthed this. Talk viewers through what the questions say and what you think is the correct answer they want to hear.
Well, I think it is a scenario. It's a make-weight scenario. It's one of these online training documents, modules where you tick a box and then do a training. It takes you 20 minutes and tick all any questions. But it becomes very clear with this question, it must be something to do through the Prevent programme.
It is.
And it is not just the NHS, it is across
so it
the
says
public sector.
If you see a membership card of a far-right political organisation in the home...
If a midwife goes there and is checking out the health of the child, they also should be checking out the political health of the family. And that, I think, is deeply concerning. It doesn't matter. Why? Look, I hold no candle for the far right or the far left. And I wouldn't care if it was somebody from Hope Not Hate or Antifa. If they're looking after the child, that's all that matters for a midwife. And so it should be. Are we saying that somebody from a political perspective, not mine or somebody else's, should not receive equal treatment by the NHS?
It doesn't say that. I mean,
but why would they be flagging it? I'll give you an example. In 2016, during the referendum, a schoolboy was seen twice to research UKIP on his school computer. Prevent were called. He was interviewed by the police as a possible radicalisation threat.
Well, why don't we stick to this question?
Yeah.
The training that people involved in safeguarding or Prevent get is to report any kind of extremism they come across. So this would equally apply if they found a Communist Party membership card on the table.
But it doesn't ask that question. It's always the right.
This is purely a generic question, and they're using
all in the same direction.
And what they're using is an easily understood scenario to say, right, what do you do next? It doesn't mean they take the baby away. It doesn't mean those parents are unfit. What it means is that under the safeguarding rules,
you should report them. Dress them up.
You should report it up. I mean, obviously, if you found a Tory membership card there and you then reported that, someone would say, "Don't be silly." But if you find one from the Ku Klux Klan,
do you not remember?
You might then say, "Well, hang on, perhaps we'll look at this again."
Isn't that the point? What is far right? For example, if they saw you're a member,
it doesn't matter.
It does matter.
It does matter
because if the midwife decides that reform is far right, they're going to encourage the midwife to grass the parents up.
It's not being grassed up. All you're doing is passing it further up.
2014, a couple who had been foster parents.
Stick to this. Don't go back into history.
No.
Stick
I'm
to
talking
this
about
particular.
evidence. You're saying this doesn't matter.
No. What I'm saying is that
but it does matter. Children were
given the options.
Social services removed
given the options.
foster children from a foster family because they were UKIP members. Meanwhile,
I know
they
you're
were
going
ignoring
back onto history.
Rape.
I'm talking about this questionnaire, and that was the right answer.
This is indicative of. The right answer was clearly report up.
No, but it was the right answer. Yes, you should.
The right answer is none of my damn business.
It is your business. You accept on your Twitter feed that if they'd found some evidence of a religious problem to do with female genital mutilation, you would report that upstairs.
Yes, FGM. Yes.
Yes. Well, that's the point.
Because that's illegal.
No, but tell me what far-right organisation has, as part of its way of being, mistreating children.
We're not trying to compare the two things.
It doesn't mean we have evidence that children were removed from UKIP-supporting foster parents.
You're going back over history.
We're
talking about this questionnaire.
Hard evidence.
And is the right thing to do?
This is how prevent is used.
Safeguarding is so important.
Safeguarding is important.
Is the right thing to do if there is a suspicion?
If the child is healthy, why do you care about the politics of the parents?
It doesn't mean that the child will be taken away. What it means is...
Why is it the business of the NHS to know the politics of the parents?
Because as safeguarding or prevent...
Why does safeguarding have a blind...
If you see extremism of any sort, what you then do is you ask for advice.
But they're not asking for extremism of any sort. They're saying, are they far right? They wouldn't say, are they radical Islam?
That's an indicative question. It could have been...
Are they far right?
It never is. It's always the right.
It could have been communist. It could have been a member of the Communist Party.
Why would I care about the communists? They look after their babies too.
If you're asking a simple, indicative question, much easier to use the far right, who've been responsible for violence recently, who've been responsible for violence recently, whereas the Communist Party hasn't.
According to MI6, 75% of all threats are Islamic, not far right.
Yeah.
So why not be indicative about Islam?
It would apply to any Islamist literature.
But it would never say that. That's the point.
Say that.
But if you just have an indicative question...
The NHS, Nigel, you know damn sure as would never say, if you spotted signs of radical Islam in a household, would you report it?
But that is covered as well. I mean, you could turn around and say that, in fact, this question is actually saying people called Thomas and Jenny are more likely to be child abusers because they're named in the question.
But no, hold on.
OK, gentlemen, we have the call time. We've run out of oxygen on this one. Excellent debate. Thank you very much. Now, we do have a spokesperson from the NHS. A statement said this. This is important training as part of the government's statutory prevent duty. There we go. Aimed at preventing terrorism and safeguarding those susceptible to radicalisation. But as the point was made there, only, it seems, from the far right. Now, coming up next, Nigel Farage challenges the government over self-determination for the Chagos Islands while we're witnessing a case of two-tier territories. That's next.
Sunday with Michael Portillo from 11, only on GB News.
In 2020, after almost 80 years, Oxford University's Pitt Rivers Museum removed its famous collection of shrunken heads with sewn-up lips and eyes made by the South American Shuar and Ashwar people. How do museums decide what should be shown and what should be confined to storage? Can controversial exhibits be left on display with suitable contextualisation in captions? Who would want to be a curator facing such controversial questions? For review, I'm delighted to be joined by journalist Eitan Smallman. Welcome to GB News. I think many people, when they hear that we're going to discuss museums or art galleries, think that it's going to be, that wokery question. But it strikes me, and I think it strikes you too, that this is not just about wokery at all. There are some really interesting ethical questions here. For example, I mean, let's start with this one, and there are several examples of it. Should we be displaying human bodies, the remains of human beings? Should we be displaying them in museums?
Absolutely. It's not just the usual suspects, young snowflakes who are objecting to these things. They're just naturally cultural shifts, and people of all ages and all political persuasions may feel uneasy about displaying human remains of any kind, especially human remains that have been taken against the will of the communities or taken violently. Hilary Mantel led a campaign to remove a 7-foot 7-inch skeleton of Charles Byrne, known as the Irish Giant, from the Hunterian Museum. he had specifically said that he didn't want to be displayed and didn't want to be taken by anatomists, and yet was displayed for a couple of hundred years until a couple of years ago. He hasn't had the burial he requested, but he's no longer on public display.
GB News, the People's Channel.
I'm Christopher Hope. From pop stars to politicians, I'll interview anybody in a pub who's got a political opinion. Join me every Friday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube or gbnews.com, or wherever you get your podcasts. This is GB News, the People's Channel.
Join me, Nana Akwe, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, he didn't say that, Dave.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Weekdays on GB News. Wake up to breakfast every day from 6 a.m. Followed by Britain's newsroom at 9:30. At noon, it's Good Afternoon Britain. Followed by Martin Daubney from 3 p.m. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to Farage with me, Martin Daubney, covering for Nigel Farage. Now, the row of the Chagos Islands continues to be a headache for this government, as that man, Nigel Farage, accuses the government of double standards after ministers promised self-determination to the Falkland Islands. The Reform UK leader also passed on concerns from the incoming US Republican administration about that Chagos deal. Let's take a listen.
I have been contacted by very senior officials and advisers from the incoming Republican administration, and every single one of them is appalled at this deal. Hasn't the time come for the government to admit this is a rotten deal for the UK, a rotten deal for America, and an even worse deal for the Chagosians? Why not have a referendum of the Chagosians and ask them to settle who should have sovereignty over those islands? Yeah.
They know that was go 52-48, and the Minister Luke Pollard for Armed Forces insisted that the deal has made progress and will not impact the UK-US base on the islands, but also will have longevity and security for decades to come. Well, will Starmer's Chagos deal be torpedoed by that man, Donald Trump? Let's go to my panel. Gawain Towler, former spokesman for Reform UK, and Nigel Nelson, GB News' senior political commentator, and hoping interview, as usual, Sir Jacob Rees-Mogg. Gentlemen, I'll come to you. So, Gawain, let's start with you. He shouted loudest in the last one. You can go first this time. Do you think this deal will get torpedoed by Trump when he comes in? Because Nigel Farage there pointing out it's a terrible deal for the UK and for the USA.
I think the most important thing that Nigel said today was to bring in the Chagosians and say the Chagosians should have a right of a say over their own future. And this is something that is new in this debate. At least obviously, the Chagosians have been wanting it for a long time, but it is new in the debate in the public sphere. And it puts the government on the spot. And that it can only be a good thing. The Chagosian people have been... Only last week, you had the British Overseas Territories having their conference here. Everybody apart from them. You had the government welcoming them all. All the flags were in Parliament Square of all those lovely flags, including that great wavy one for the British Indian Overseas
And Nigel
Territory.
Nelson, isn't that a point? You know, so far the position of the Starmer regime has been, it's the poor, oppressed Chagosians. They were devastated by the British. It's only natural to let them be governed by Mauritius, but nobody's asked them.
Well, I mean, I think they should have been involved in negotiations, although very difficult because there's so many different groups of them to actually join a negotiation. What they have got is resettlement back to their own home again as a result of this deal. So that's something. I don't think that Nigel Farage is right to compare that to the Falklands.
Only under the terms of not saying they're Chagosian, but saying they're Mauritian under the threat of a 10-year jail sentence. That's hardly you can come home.
Well, no, I mean, they would be... If this treaty goes through, we haven't seen the details yet, and the new Mauritius government may well scupper it. We haven't seen the details, but the idea is they can go home. A referendum about who they want to have sovereignty over the islands is not practical, as some of them live in the Seychelles, some live in Mauritius, 3,000 over here, and it's not comparable with the Falklands because nobody lives there.
There was a vote for the Chancellor of the University of Oxford last week. And the voters came from all over the world because they once went to university at Oxford. Tens of thousands of people had the right to vote, and they were in Australia, they were in Canada, in Africa, they were in China, they were all over the place, and yet they were able to organise a referendum. So it cannot be on the wit of man to organise a referendum of the people of the Chagos.
OK, that point I'd like to bring us to Jacob Rees-Mogg. Do you think there's a good point by Nigel Farage? There should be a referendum on this?
Well, I think it's British territory and we shouldn't be giving it up. I think it's much simpler than that, and that it's an important strategic area. And the minister made, to my mind, a fundamental error. He said that the new situation would be more secure. Now, anyone who has a freehold knows that a freehold is more secure than a leasehold. His Majesty's government is exchanging a freehold for a leasehold. That is axiomatically less secure.
OK, so Jacob, it's State of the Nation up next. You've got a quick minute. What's on your menu, sir?
Well, I've got Fraser Nelson coming in, former editor of The Spectator, to talk about this extraordinary state of affairs in our welfare benefit system, where you can be £3,000 a year better off on incapacity benefits than you can be working on the minimum wage. And this gives people a real incentive not to look for work. Nobody in his right mind would look for work and lose money. Work ought always to pay, but that means that benefits shouldn't give people an incentive to make a lifestyle choice when they don't necessarily have the illnesses that they may have had before.
And is it Grimsby, I believe, that's now the benefits capital of Britain, which is so abandoned by the fishing industry and all the rest of it? What else is on your menu, sir?
Well, what else are we going to do? John Bolton's coming in, a very significant figure in the first Trump administration, so he's going to be talking about all things Trumpian, probably no doubt including the Chagos Islands and the relationship with the British government. And we've got Michael Ellis coming in to talk about the International Criminal Court. And, really worryingly, news in today's papers saying that jury trials may be under threat in the name of efficiency. If it's a choice between justice and efficiency, I'd always back justice.
OK, so Jacob Rees-Mogg is next. State of the Nation. Thank you to my panel, Gawain Towler and Nigel Nelson. I'll be back tomorrow, 3 till 6 p.m. Thank you for joining in tonight with Nigel Farage, with me, Martin Daubney. Lively, I think was the word I'd use. Gentlemen, thank you very much, and I'll see you tomorrow. All the best. Cheers.
Despite the morning rain, it'll be a nice, warm, cosy day ahead. Boxed heat pumps, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello, good evening. Welcome to your GB News weather update from the Met Office. Turning very cold overnight in northern areas with a sharp frost and a risk of ice. Cloudier elsewhere though, so not turning quite as chilly, but it's still going to be a fairly cold night on offer for all. We've currently got high pressure sat to the north of the country. That's bringing in a cold northerly flow of air, bringing us that risk of frost and ice overnight. So any showers across Scotland, Northern Ireland, northern parts of England, generally easing away. Plenty of clear skies here where we're likely to see that sharp frost by the time we reach the morning. Perhaps even some freezing fog patches and some icy stretches too, but much